Considering the sorts of videos we make, it should come as no surprise that we're big fans of Star Wars: The Clone Wars, and odds are you are too. The Clone Wars gave us plenty of great new stories and characters, including many beloved clones. It dedicated many episodes to the struggles of its clone protagonists, casting them as heroes fighting to save a failing republic and making us care for their plight. Because of the Clone Wars, we've made many videos about some of our favorite clone characters, the unsung heroes of the Republic. But were the clones really heroes? After all, they played a major role in the rise of the Empire, and largely a conscious one at that. In this video, we'll be examining this uncomfortable question.
Attention, Sergeant on deck!
At the end of the Clone Wars, the Republic was officially transformed into the Galactic Empire. But as we discussed in an older video, the Republic fell long before Palpatine made it official. Over the course of the Separatist crisis, the Republic had undergone a series of dramatic transformations, cannibalizing itself for fear of the CIS. As we discussed in the earlier video, the Republic's fall became inevitable at the very start of the Clone Wars, when the Military Creation Act was passed. While nobody knew it at the time, the adoption of the clone army was a death knell of the Republic. Why, you may ask? Well, to put it simply, because many of the Separatists were well within their rights to want to secede. For tens of thousands of years, the Republic had enabled the wealthy systems of the core worlds as they exploited the Rim, stripping whole planets of resources to enrich themselves. This galactic inequality was why a lot of worlds seceded. In the early days of the movement, the cause was fueled by remote systems neglected by the Republic, Outer Rim, and expansion region worlds that had been constantly exploited, and worlds like Onderon whose political leaders objected to these abuses. Even though the Separatist movement was hijacked by megacorporations later on, and even though it had been a Sith psyop the whole time, the ordinary people who supported the CIS had good reason to. The Republic could have confronted these problems. It could have tried to understand why so many systems were seceding and tried to address their concerns. Instead, with the Military Creation Act, it chose to raise an army and reincorporate Separatist worlds by force. It chose the Imperial Road, and it spent the war eroding the democratic rights that many of its citizens had once taken for granted, transforming into a repressive military regime. That was the purpose of the Clone Wars, and it was the purpose of the Clone Army. The clones carried out Palpatine's agenda every step of the way toward the establishment of the Empire. Most clones didn't think too hard about the politics of their job, but that's no excuse. Their loyalty was blind, but the clones were still loyal to the Republic and acted in its interests. Virtually all of them remained loyal after the Republic became the Empire, since very few clones actually saw the difference between the two. After all, the harsh military rule the Empire subjected the galaxy to was all the clones had ever known. Republic democracy had only ever been a slogan to them. Furthermore, many clones weren't completely unaware of what they were really fighting for. Few thought about the big picture, but most clones were totally okay with doing sketchy, repressive stuff if the higher-ups ordered it. Some clones even proposed morally bankrupt solutions to the Republic's problems of their own initiative. During the Battle of Jabim, for example, ARC Trooper Alpha 17 repeatedly pushed for Republic forces to massacre Jabim's political leadership and implement martial law on the planet, a plan that, thankfully, his Jedi superiors rejected. Even if galactic-scale politics weren't really Alpha's thing, he clearly had zero regard for the rights of civilian populations, especially when their interests clashed with the Republic's. On Jabim, the locals had good reason to want to secede from the Republic. For 3,000 years, the Republic had neglected Jabim as it suffered terrible hardship, and when valuable ore was discovered in the planet's crust, the Senate rushed to nationalize it and prevent the Jabimi from reaping any of the benefits. Another separatist world with good reason to secede was Umbara, which was willing to stand by the Republic despite Senate corruption until their senator was murdered in his own office in cold blood. The locals on those worlds fought because they wanted an escape from the miseries of the Republic. The clones were fighting to keep them in shackles. Even when dealing with worlds that probably deserved a kick in the teeth, the clones were responsible for some pretty terrible atrocities. During the Battle of Nemoidia, Republic forces deliberately set fire to the Nemoidians' grub hatcheries, killing massive amounts of Nemoidian young and causing a population crash for the entire species. That, for the record, was straight up genocide, and it was part of a broader trend of outright speciesism toward the supposed separatist species. Members of species whose homeworlds had seceded, such as the Nemoidians, Skakoans, Gossams, and Muns, were seen by many loyalists, clones included, as separatist by default, and they were discriminated against because of this. In many cases, clones actively participated in their persecution. Behind the battle lines, the Senate often called upon clone garrisons on core worlds like Coruscant to enforce increasingly repressive security acts. Members of the Coruscant Guard in particular were given broad authority to perform random, warrantless searches and seizures to detain whoever they wanted for whatever reason, to spy on Republic citizens, and worse. They used this authority to devastating effect, especially against non-humans who were often abused, stripped of their possessions, and deported from wealthy core worlds for suspected separatist loyalties. When the Commission for the Preservation of the Republic, or COMPOR, was formed midway through the Clone Wars, clone troopers were deployed to protect their rallies, despite the fact that COMPOR was deeply humanocentrist and not formally affiliated with the Republic. Sure, the clones didn't have the whole picture, but they had enough of it that they should have at least sensed that what they were doing was sometimes problematic. The thing is, most of them just didn't care. As far as most clones were concerned, the Republic was always right, and that was all they cared about. When the Republic became the Empire and clone troopers became Stormtroopers, this attitude remained, and the clones became the enforcers of one of the galaxy's most evil regimes. With all that established, we think it's safe to say that clones weren't heroes, at least as a whole. We're not denying that they acted heroically now and again. Rex, Wolf, and the Wolf Pack saved those Togruta slaves at Kadavo, for example, which was undeniably a heroic act. But the fact remains that almost every single clone actively and to a degree knowingly contributed to the rise of the Empire. Even Captain Rex participated in the subjugation of Umbara, a planet which had every right to break away from the Republic. Rex may have become a real hero after the war in canon, but we can't really consider his service in the Grand Army of the Republic heroism. With that said, just because the clones weren't heroes doesn't automatically make them evil. There were some evil clones, such as the ones responsible for the genocide on Nemoidia, but most weren't consciously practicing evil. When most clones did evil or sketchy things, they tended to see them as just part of their job. Now, for a normal army, this explanation wouldn't fly. Just following orders is an unacceptable excuse, especially for war crimes. But the Grand Army of the Republic wasn't a normal army. The clones were genetically modified and programmed from birth to blindly follow orders, and they also weren't given a choice. They were, legally speaking, slaves of the Republic. That last part muddies the water a little. The clones were victim of the Republic in their own right, though only a very small number of clones realize this. We mentioned earlier that one of the reasons the clones so readily supported the Empire was because Imperial-style repression was all they had ever known, and this should be taken into consideration when we're talking about the clones' moral character. Most clones didn't really have a concept of sentient rights. They were never given any, after all. So the clones weren't heroes, and they weren't evil either. Some of them, like Rex, could have been considered good people, though the clones were definitely not the good guys of the Clone Wars. Most of the clones, though, were just humans. They were cogs in a greater machine, transmitting the abuses they suffered to the galactic population, fighting and dying for whatever cause owned them because most of them could barely even conceive of a different life. The clones were pawns, not heroes, no matter how sympathetic Star Wars The Clone Wars made them seem. Well, that's one more hot take to add to the pile. We're sure you're eager to get the torches and pitchforks out if you haven't already started going off in the comments. All the same, we want to know what you think. Do you agree with our assessment or not? Feel free to post all your thoughts in the comment section below. And as always guys, thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you in the next video.